I would like to welcome you all to the very first International Symposium on Girls in Conflict with the Law. This is our first introductory webinar. We're very excited. Once again, my name is Joshua. I work at the Dui Hua Foundation. My colleagues Joy Henry and Sammy Amanatullah are also on the panel here. They'll be helping me screen some of the questions that you send in with the Q&A feature. Just to give you a quick overview of how today will go, I'm going to give you an overview of what I'm doing now for a couple of minutes, and then I'll turn things over to Dui Hua's Executive Director, John Kamm. He will give a 10 to 15 minute presentation, and then we'll hear 10 to 15 minutes from our other partners, Tagreed Jaber from Penal Reform International, coming in from Jordan today, and also Patricia Lee of the San Francisco Public Defender's Office. Once they've each given their presentations, our panelists will answer questions that you can submit via the Q&A window at any time. There's a button on the bottom of your screen to be able to do that. If anyone wants to try that out now, you can ask us just, how are you doing? Or something with the question and answer feature. But otherwise, just feel free to ask us questions as they arise, as you listen to the presentations, and then some of them might be answered immediately, but most of them will be waiting for the question and answer session at the end. So for people who are still coming in now, I'm going to post some of what I just said in the chat. Oops, I think I sent it to the wrong group. 1 second. All right, could you, attendees, you can do your raise hand if you see that chat to you all. All right, looks like you see it, okay. And then without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Dui Hua Executive Director, John Kamm.
Well, good morning. I hope you can all hear me. My name is John Kamm. I am the Executive Director of the Dui Hua Foundation, which is a San Francisco grouped NGO that focuses on securing clemency and better treatment for at-risk detainees. And that group of at-risk detainees includes juvenile offenders and women in prison. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to my colleagues in the control tower, Joshua, who you've just heard from. In addition, we have Sammy Amanatullah. He's our Publication and Grants Officer. And finally, Joy Henry, who's our Special Events Coordinator. And we're especially grateful to Joy. She was the person who created our banner, which you are looking at now. So thank you all. I'll start by just listing our partners. Dui Hua, our partners, not the supporters. Joshua, go back to partners, to the screen. Thank you. Patricia Lee is our host partner here in San Francisco. She's the managing attorney of the juvenile unit of the San Francisco Public Defender's Office. Penal Reform International, who's represented this morning by Tagreed Jaber from Jordan. And then our two Hong Kong partners, actually both are at the University of Hong Kong. The first is Center for Comparative and Public Law, and that's in the School of Law. And then we have the Center for Criminology, which is in the Sociology Department. So those are our four partners. Okay, next. Okay, so we, to make this event possible, we have received dedicated grants from Canada, the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives, run out of the embassy in Beijing, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, its Beijing embassy. And then we have two private grantors, both Bay Area based, Alice Lam Memorial Fund and Mark Headley and his wife, Christina Peel. Dui Hua gets core grants from a number of governments, and we have drawn on those core grants to help finance this series of webinars. They include the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, SIDA, Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Norway. And finally, of course, Dui Hua has its own loyal group of supporters, and they make donations, and some of those wind up in our Special Program Development Fund. Now, here are today's speakers. Tagreed Jaber, Regional Director for Penal Reform International. She handles the Middle East and North Africa. She has 20 years of experience in the field of human rights. Patricia Lee is the Managing Attorney of the Juvenile Unit of San Francisco Public Defender's Office. She's widely acknowledged experts on the topic of girls in conflict with the law. She's been practicing in the juvenile court since 1981. And then there's me. I'm an American businessman, active in China since 1973. Okay, next. Now, before I say this, I go over this quickly, this slide. I do want to say a bit about the international nature of this symposium. This symposium started out as an in-person event, but principally because of the COVID crisis, we moved it to a virtual event. And we have 25 speakers who will be featured on our webinars coming up, and I'll go over a list of those at the end of this presentation. We have 25 speakers from 10 different countries. Today, we have more than 50 people representing more than 15 countries in the audience, which is, again, a great turnout. So what are the goals of this symposium, this series of webinars which make up the symposium? Well, first of all, raise awareness of the crisis. Now, you know, we hear this term crisis, this word, used quite a bit. You have crises in different parts of the world. You have climate crisis. We talk of the refugee crisis and so on, but rarely, if ever, do we talk about the crisis of girls in conflict with the law. And so we're going to raise awareness of the crisis. Cambridge International Dictionary defines crisis as a serious and increasingly dangerous situation. And that's exactly what we are talking about today. So we want to raise awareness of this crisis. We want to exchange best practices and make recommendations to governments. Speaking of best practices, later, Patty Lee will discuss with us, tell us about the decision in San Francisco to close their juvenile detention facility. This is certainly the first major city in the United States to take this step. Many of you have asked me via emails, what about this? It's so interesting. So Patty Lee will be talking about that. And finally, make recommendations. We all have ways and means to make recommendations, whether it's to government or to institutions, legislatures, and so those are the goals of the symposium. Next. Well, for this slide, I've given you a couple of points drawn from the presentation by Rights for Girls staff attorneys in conjunction with the Justice Clearinghouse here in the United States. If you haven't had a chance to look at that presentation, I ask you to do so. You know, we're talking here about an international symposium. What the Rights for Girls did is one that is focused exclusively on girls in the United States. Now, I just want to read something that I took off Professor Novak's presentation, and I'm quoting. although, or even though numbers show that girls are much less represented in detention facility than boys, across all regions, there is an increase in girls in detention facilities. Now, in the United States, you had a 45% increase in the number of girls arrested from 1993 to 2013. And during the same period, the Chinese courts convicted more than 10%. Now, we're comparing apples and oranges here. Obviously, arrests are not the same as convictions. And thanks to diversion practices, in fact, quite a few girls do not actually enter the courtroom and are tried. Now, one of the remarkable things that the pointed out by Rights for Girls is that although girls of color make up 22% of the American population, in fact, and here I have to find this, they make up something like 2/3 of the girls who are incarcerated, okay? So yes, 62% to be exact. So 62% are girls, okay? Girls of color. 62% of incarcerated girls are girls of color, but only 22% of the youth population are girls of color. So there you can see the extent to which race and ethnicity contribute to the crisis of girls in conflict with the law. Next slide, please. And what's so notable, and again, I'm drawing on the numbers presented by Rights for Girls. When you compare girls to boys, and this is all quite well known, they're much more likely to have suffered emotional and physical abuse, more than 4 times more likely than boys to have suffered sexual abuse. In fact, 22% of girls have experienced sexual abuse 7 days before incarceration. They're more likely to be in a household where substance abuse takes place. And here's a striking one. More likely to live in households with mental illness. Around 20% of girls themselves are suicidal when they enter the juvenile justice system. Okay, next. Now, the next 2 slides, I really only have 3 more. So how did this all begin? Well, first of all, I've mentioned that we work in the area of juvenile justice. And so from starting in 2008, we conducted 5 expert exchanges with the Supreme People's Court. And we also did an international symposium in person on the Bangkok rules, which Tagreed has been very active in promoting. We did that in Hong Kong in 2014, and there too we had Penal Reform International and University of Hong Kong. And Patricia Lee also participated. So after our most recent exchange with the Supreme Court in Shenzhen, I went up to Beijing to begin talking to our Chinese friends about possible participation in a symposium on girls. Throughout 2018, we identified our partners that I've just listed and possible participants. Now, again, I mentioned that we have 25 speakers from about 10 countries. And who are these speakers? Who are these presenters? Well, they're judges, they're attorneys, they're activists, they're journalists. We're going to have Nick Kristof from the New York Times present later. So we have a wide range of people who will be speaking from their experience and knowledge. I'm sorry if I've missed anybody, but those are a few. Then in 2019, we secured our grants from Canada and Netherlands, for which we're very grateful. We also got our funding from private foundations, and we began work on an English language bibliography which is a 44-page document listing and annotating all the publications we could find. It's by no means exhaustive. And I have to apologize at this point, it's only in English. If we were including other languages, I have no doubt it would be hundreds of pages. So a lot has been written about this crisis. Finally, what we did in 2019 was we decided to stage this symposium in Hong Kong in April 2020. Next. However, civil unrest in Hong Kong prompted our rescheduling and relocating to San Francisco to take place in 2020. But unfortunately, here in San Francisco, and up to the present day, by the way, the COVID-19 situation here is very bad. So fortunately, we made the decision to go virtual. The first webinar is today. The next webinar will be November 10th. I call these introductory webinars because this is where our partners have a chance to introduce themselves, their work, and a topic of great interest to them. And so we are now about to launch our dedicated website where we'll be putting up presentations and tapes, resources like the bibliography there. So the plan is for our webinars to be completed by mid-March, after which there will be follow-up. So my last slide. Here's the lineup. Obviously, I didn't have space to put down the names of everyone who's presenting, but you will know in due course. So our first, the next webinar will be the introduction. We will have remarks from Anna Wu, who I believe is in the audience. Thank you, Anna. Then we have, well, you can read Pathways into and Out of Offending for Girls. December 14th, very special, Voices from Africa and the Middle East. We're having International Perspectives. Juvenile Incarceration, Alternatives to That, which will feature a specialist from China. Then we're going to have a webinar dedicated to the view from Hong Kong and Guangzhou on girls in conflict with law. You will see on the right side of your screen a photograph of Richard Ross's book, Girls in Justice. If you haven't seen it or read it, I encourage you to do so. It is a striking compilation of very moving photographs, and that's one of them on the right. Then we get into sex trafficking with members of the San Francisco Collective Against Sex Trafficking and Nick Kristof. I promised, I just said I wasn't going to list everyone, but Nick Kristof is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who has specialized in trafficking, especially of girls. Then we have to be determined the view from Beijing, treatment of Indigenous girls in Canada's justice system, and finally, sexual violence. So that's my presentation. At this point, I would like to hand it over to Tagreed Jaber. Thank you all for attending again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John, for this interesting introduction to the whole topic and the whole idea of the symposium and virtual events that we're very delighted at Penal Reform International that we're organizing in partnership with all of our partners who were mentioned by John. And I would like to stress on what John has said when he described it as a crisis. The fact that girls within the criminal justice system are a minority is unfortunately putting them in more risks in facing this crisis and in facing double discrimination within the criminal justice system. And this is why an organization like Penal Reform International have been very active in working globally and in MENA region specifically, which I'm representing, and promoting juvenile justice and justice for children in general, with a special focus on the girl child through developing different projects and programs that provide technical assistance to government and authorities in order for them to work on creating gender-responsive justice systems that can benefit the adult women and the girl child, and at the same time, child-friendly justice systems that can respond better to the needs and the rights of little girls. Since many of you maybe do not have that much information about the region, I would like to take you through some of the information and the facts about the MENA region, and then we can go back to talk more about how PRI, through its recommendations, work on trying to support governments and authorities to overcome some of the challenges and the problems that we have. In general, MENA region is a relatively young nation, you know. For example, if we look at a country like Jordan in 2015, 40% of its population were under 18. And if we look at a country like Yemen in 2019, where it had 23 million as its population, 12 million of these population were children under 18. So this can give you an indicator about the number of children living in this region, where nearly half of the population in the Middle East are under 24 years old. Additionally, and unfortunately, I was not able to really find accurate information about the percentage of girl child within the MENA region, but I can give you some figures that can give you an idea of the percentage of women in general, which we can reflect on the number of girls. In Algeria, 49.5% of the population are females. In Jordan, 49.8%, and in Morocco, it's 50.39% of the population are women. So we can, if we do a comparison, we can say that half of the children in the MENA region are girl child. And these girls are facing, similar to the boys also, a number of challenges and difficulties that arose as part of the ongoing conflicts in the region, including Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. And at the same time, as a reason of, unfortunately, the lack of compliance with the international standards for human rights through the different systems that we have. For example, you will find out that the number of children who are dropping out from school is a very high number in this region. And the number of children who, due to the armed conflict, had to leave schools only in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen are 14.3 million child now. And we all know the relationship between dropping schools and leaving schools and criminality. And this is an issue that we need to have further look at and work at in order to prevent children and young little girls from going towards committing crimes. Next slide, please. Gender inequalities to continue to be an issue in the MENA region. And this is affected mainly by the culture and by the fact that many of the governments and the decision-making levels at political levels are also dominated by males, and female participation is still very low, which means that women can actually have less access to influence the overall policies in the region that is related to education and many other issues and related to gender equalities. The crises in general, as I said, increase the vulnerabilities of the children and the girls mainly. And girl child also in the MENA region face the challenge of early marriage. If you can look at the figures that we're having here, you will find out that 1 in 5 girls in MENA region marry before the age of 18. And we all know what early marriage, the complications that comes with early marriage. These little girls are more subject to sexual violence, are more subject to physical violence, and to bear the responsibility of other children while they are in a very early age of their life. And this, in itself, is a major violation that results in many cases in them coming in contact with the law due to that fact. Additionally, violent discipline measures are still very practiced in many of the countries in the region, where 7 in 10 children are punished by physical means in the region. And many of these children do not have means to go and report against the violations that they are subject to. And some of these violations can be really severe, and in some cases result in death and loss in life. Next slide, please. Additionally, one of the other problems that little girls face in the MENA region is the phenomena of the genital mutilations that you are all aware of. 92% of women and girls in Egypt have been facing this problem. And this is despite the fact that many of the legal systems criminalize these acts, it's still practiced under the pretext of culture. Also, human trafficking is another issue that women are suffering from. And 2 in 3 child victims of human trafficking are young girls among all the women who are victims of trafficking. And in MENA region, unfortunately, girls are still subject to the so-called honor killing, where girls can be killed to protect the honor of the family, just only because they might have a Facebook account or had a chat with a boy who is the neighbor in the, who is her neighbor. So girls face so many challenges in this region, and they consist a high majority. But as John have said, despite the fact that the number of girls is increasing in different criminal justice systems and their interaction with the criminal justice systems, they still a minority. And this fact is making some of the governments not taking them and their needs into attention. For example, in Jordan today, and I had a call with the head of the juvenile department in Jordan, we have 350 child at care centers in Jordan, and there's only 3 girls. In a country like Yemen, there are 6 girls in prison and 11 girls in prison in Algeria. But because of this little number, these girls are usually kept with adult women. And you will find that few countries will dedicate for them a special detention center or a special care center. In Jordan, for example, there is a special care center for girls, but it's a tiny small building where there's no space to do recreational activities, rehabilitation, reintegration programs. It's only a space where these girls can sleep, eat, and serve their sentence while they are there. Informal justice system also. Many of our countries have the so-called informal justice system that is run by the tribal structure or by the influential people within the community. And these informal justice systems are not gender sensitive at all, because the principle of the informal justice system is that usually the right is with those who have more power. And in our societies, men would have more power than women. So these 4 informal justice systems lack having gender sensitive procedure, and usually they are not fair in their judgments towards women. In a country like Yemen, Jordan, and Palestine, it's one of the systems that people would resort to solve many of the problems that they are having. And in Yemen and Sudan currently, due to the conflicts, the informal justice system is playing a major role as an alternative to the official justice system, which consists a major challenge facing women dealing with the justice sector. And all over our research, and John have tackled that and talked about it, disaggregated data about girls within the criminal justice system is very little in our region, and you cannot have enough information about it, and little research have been done in this field. So we lack the statistics that we can use to influence and inform the decision makers in taking decisions in this regard. And there's a need for more research and more disaggregated data in this field. In general, justice systems are not really child-friendly as they are supposed to be in the region. In some countries, we have specialized police, juvenile police, we have specialized juvenile courts, specialized juvenile prosecutions, but in many others, it's not the case. You will find that regular police deals with children. Children cannot have legal representation in front of the police, and many other problems and that they face while they go through the criminal justice system. Diversion is not a priority in many of the criminal justice systems, neither at the police level or at the prosecution level or the judiciary. There's a lack of alternative to imprisonment in the MENA region in general. Jordan, for example, adopted a law in 2016 that introduced alternative and community services and different programs for juveniles, but unfortunately, up until now, only around 80 children have benefited from that, and the system still needs more support and more work towards promoting alternative to children. And PRI in general is very active in working globally and within the MENA region and the other regional offices in Africa, Central Asia, and South Caucasus on promoting justice for children in general, as I said. John's talked about the Bangkok rules, and we're very proud at Penal Reform International that we are one of the main promoters and advocates for the implementation of the Bangkok rules, and we have developed a series of guidance documents and index of compliance and many practical guidelines that can put the implementation of the Bangkok rules into practice in the different countries all around the world. And I encourage everyone to go to our website and download them. They are available in different languages where you can benefit from them. As I said, diversion is a priority for PRI, promoting alternatives. The issue of working on supporting and enhancing the mental health of children in detention is one of the things. And we have witnessed during the outbreak of COVID that this issue was a priority and a need for us. And this is why we have developed mental support programs for children in detention in Algeria to help supporting them during the crisis. And we also worked on providing humanitarian assistance and emergent response to children in care centers and detention facilities in Yemen and in Jordan as a response to that. One of the main issues that I do see as a need globally and in MENA region is to work on comprehensive interventions that aim at creating gender responsive justice systems. That includes all the justice sector chain, starting from the police until and after the release and the aftercare of people of women who go through the criminal justice system. And such systems still weak almost in all of the MENA region countries. We still need to work further on empowering women working within the criminal justice system, including more female police officers, female judges, prosecutors, and at the same time, make the system more sensitive for women and girl child so they can seek justice, which is one of the challenges that we have. Many women and girl child, they do not seek justice because the system is not friendly enough. And unfortunately, many of them, when they get in touch with the system, they face more problems and difficulties, and in some cases, harassment, which makes them refrain from seeking justice and going through the criminal justice system. There's lots of work and that is still needed to enable and empower women in their process and help them during their pathway and journey to go through the criminal justice system. And in my next presentation on the 14th of December, I will be talking more about concrete examples from the region about some of the best practices that have been done in this regard. thank you very much for joining us in the symposium today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tagreed. I think we'll hand things over to Patricia Lee now. John, is there anything you wanted to say? You can shake your head. No? Okay, right to Patricia Lee then.
Okay, great. Oh, very good, Tagreed. Thank you very much. And we'll move now to Patricia Lee, who will speak to us in large part over this fascinating development, this decision to close the juvenile hall in San Francisco. So take it away, Patricia.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. Good morning in sunny California and San Francisco, and good evening to some of you in the other parts of the world. I'm very excited to be here and presenting on a very exciting ordinance that has occurred in San Francisco. So if you could move to the next slide. All right, and we do have the slide before, we do have a photograph of our juvenile hall. And the far right corner is the actual detention center where youth are placed. And then there is a photograph of a room where the youth are detained. It is one youth per room with the metal toilet and concrete slab for the bed. And then down below in the far left corner, as you look at this slide, is one of the units. There's an upper unit, upper floor and lower floor. And there are 8 units in our juvenile hall. If we could have the next slide. So our closed juvenile hall ordinance was passed almost unanimously. We have 11 supervisors. 10 of them signed on to close juvenile hall. This was passed in June 2019, and it requires San Francisco to close our detention facility by December 31st, 2021. That is next year. It's a very aggressive timeline. We had 2 years to work on this. With the hope to expand community-based alternatives. There's been mention of diversion, and also provide a rehabilitative, non-institutional place or places of detention that must be approved by the court. Can we move to the next slide? So I will say that, as John mentioned earlier, that San Francisco is the first metropolitan area to pass legislation to close our juvenile detention facility. And the eyes of other jurisdictions in California and frankly throughout the nation are looking at San Francisco to see if this is something that they can replicate. We have over 881,000 youth, a population in San Francisco of 881,000, with a youth population of 13.4% of youth under 18. And this is a smaller percentage of children than any other major metropolitan area. And right now, currently, the total youth in the system from diversion through those that are incarcerated or on probation, in or out of custody, is 467. So the population is small. Our juvenile hall houses only youth pre-adjudication, pre-sentence. So there are other jurisdictions throughout the nation and in California, we have 58 counties where their detention facilities actually house youth who are committed to their juvenile hall. Because we are only a temporary holding facility, it was easier to conceptualize and draft this legislation. And so I talked about moving very aggressively on our timeline. And so we have the chronology of what has occurred so far. In January and February, we established our work focus areas, and we had 15 members from various governmental agencies, youth and families, and NGOs that were vetted by our Board of Supervisors and appointed officially to the work group. I have been elected the chairperson, and this has been quite a challenge moving this ordinance forward and hopefully realizing our deadline, which is occurring within a year and 2 months to actually close the facility. We had our first in-person meeting in the beginning of the year, and unfortunately, we have had a number of challenges that all of us are confronting now. But one of the major challenges to our meetings and to our work is that we are required to comply with the San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance. And that is that any meetings of the work group require notice to the public, notice of agenda, and any meetings have to be in public, and otherwise we would be out of compliance, and we do not want to jeopardize any of the work that's going forward. In March and May, we stalled in having our in-person meetings, but we have since moved aggressively to have virtual meetings, which has proceeded, I think, on a monthly basis, and now we're adding more subcommittee meetings with defined tasks and homework assignments. And I have a number of those tasks, which I'm going to go through in the next slide. So, Josh. So the subcommittees, Tagreed mentioned the importance of having statistics, and that is crucial to the work that we are undergoing. So we have a data and needs assessment. Right now, we are targeting a facility of possibly 20 to 30 youth at the most, in order to support the notion that we would have a facility of no more than 20 or 30, we have to collect the data. Our juvenile hall can house up to 150 youth. And I will say that pre-COVID, we were housing youth anywhere from 40 to 45 youth on any given day. And post-COVID, we have been holding steady at anywhere from 10, as low as 10 youth, to today we have 20 youth. But on average, it has been 12 to 15 youth during COVID times and shelter in place. As you can see, the majority of youth, and I would say at least 1/3 of the youth that are in custody now are being detained for technical violations, warrants, and nonviolent offenses. And I will say that those on technical and warrants and nonviolent offenses are girls. Right now, with 20 youth in custody, we only have 2 girls in custody. And for a period of time during COVID, we had 0 girls in custody. And I will say for every single girl in custody, we have 100% youth of color. And so as you can see, even though the girls comprise a small percentage of youth in custody, they present with very serious behavioral and mental health issues. And any child that touches the carceral system and is housed in a detention facility is traumatized by that experience. And there is research and data that will be discussed in our future webinars that indicates that those youth will most likely move into the adult system. And proportionally, youth are detained for less serious reasons has increased. And what we're seeing during COVID times that the youth in custody are presenting with very serious mental health issues, very true for our girls, suffering PTSD, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. And I will say that one of the driving forces in the legislation was the cost of incarceration. Back a year ago, the Chronicle produced a publication increasing, at that time, the cost of incarceration on average was $275,000 per year annually. San Francisco now, annually to house a youth in custody is $374,000 annually. Along with the data across the nation, in San Francisco, in California, crimes amongst youth have decreased by more than 50%. Violent crime has gone down by more than 15%, if not 80%. So those are the driving factors that led to the closed juvenile hall ordinance. And so if I could have the next slide. So I touched upon the importance of addressing the issues of programs and mental health for youth that are detained in custody. Based on the data that we have collected so far, we have 42 programs, NGOs or community-based organizations, CBOs, that serve our incarcerated youth in San Francisco. And also we have 32 programs that serve in custody with, 42 programs total for out and in custody. And one of the things that we have identified is that there is still, in spite of all these programs, a gap in the mental health services. And this is particularly true in working with the girl population. And Tagreed has mentioned that because of the small percentage of girls that are in conflict with the law or in carceral institutions, the money, unfortunately, is directed to the boy population. So even now in 2020, we are seeing that the girl population is underserved and under-resourced. Another subcommittee that we have is reinvestment and policy. And strikingly, after working for months in trying to secure the budget from various agencies and from community programs, we were able to arrive at a budget expenditure for 5 agencies that serve our juvenile justice youth that are in detention. This is the Department of Public Health, our Unified School District, our Children, Youth and Families Agency, and the Juvenile Probation Department. It is $24 million directed only to the juvenile hall that detains our kids. That is a staggering amount of money. And so if I could have the next slide. Of course, this is one of the most important subcommittees we have. That is a facilities subcommittee. And the charge is to close our detention center and provide an alternative, as I indicated, that the courts will approve. So, so our homework to our subcommittees and to the facilities subcommittee is, what does it look like to have a home for the most restrictive? And what does it look like to have a home for the least restrictive setting for our youth? And so if you look at the bullet points we have here, these are the considerations that we have determined is necessary for us to close our juvenile hall and to create an alternative home-like environment. So we have to look at the physical plan. We have to look at which location. We cannot be outside of San Francisco. The security levels are of great significance and importance for our judges, for youth who are brought in on the most serious offenses. Space and function. Staffing has been a huge consideration because we do have counselors who have been employed at our juvenile hall, many for over 20 years. Many are folks of color, and we do not want people to lose their jobs. We are looking at repurposing and possibly moving staff to the alternative that we create and build, or to repurpose to work as counselors in the school district. Transportation is a big issue. Currently, our juvenile hall is adjacent to our courts, and the youth are brought from juvenile hall and walk to our courts. But when we build a new facility, we're going to have to provide for transportation. And one of the major considerations by our Board of Supervisors was that we would not have a facility outside of San Francisco. And obviously, we have to look at the programs that exist within the facility for the youth that are housed there. Labor is a major consideration. San Francisco is a very strong union town, so we have to work very closely with the unions to determine and make certain and ensure that we are in compliance with all of the labor rules and regulations that are local and also federal. So if we could move to the next slide. This is what was developed by the facilities subcommittee. And if any of you are looking at facilities, I think it's important, whether you build one or you have an existing one, that these are considerations that need to be included in any youth detention facility. No more than 30 youth. It should be non-correctional. It should be a home-like environment. In other words, have bright colors on the wall, have murals. It should be a therapeutic environment, and there should be private rooms so that there can be counseling for the youth, and there can be family counseling if it's necessary. Home-like environment, individual rooms, furniture that is not a concrete slab, and a metal toilet next to that concrete slab, space to support equipment and high quality education. And this is very important for our youth. It's having the outdoor space so that youth can be outdoors and have recreation. And to me, one of the most important factors is to have the staff trained on a consistent basis in positive youth development. It should be strength-based, and it should be incentive-based. And if I could have the next slide. So we do, okay, so our next steps, obviously, we have a little over a year to actually shutter the doors of our juvenile hall. We are moving from a lock-em-up mentality that started in the early 90s with our super predator legislation. And now we are moving to a model of alternatives and diversion. And diversion is the term that I adopt in this, because we are also working with the police because they are the gatekeepers, so that they can divert youth on the street. They do not even enter the front gates of the courtroom or of our lockup. And one of the most exciting parts of this, even though it's been challenging and unfortunate that we are in shelter in place, we are doing a virtual symposium. We are in times of COVID and it is raging. there has been, I think, some very, very strong progress and reform, because we have seen our juvenile detention rate drop by more than 50%. We are holding steady at anywhere from 12 to 15 youth on any given day during shelter in place. And for our girl population, we were holding for several weeks with no girls in juvenile hall. And like today I indicated, we only have 2 girls. So I think in terms of the girl population, we can decarcerate girls from the juvenile justice system, and we can truly divert them to community alternatives so that they do not touch the system and they are not traumatized by a system that is very broken. So with that, I thank you for your time. I'm so excited to have you all here, and I encourage you to attend the many, many webinars that we've planned. This has been a work in progress, and I'm so excited to see that we have so many countries that are interested and hopefully willing to join us in partners in moving to reform broken systems, create holistic systems, and decarcerate youth from the juvenile justice system. So thank you, John, and I thank Dui Hua for all of the work, and certainly to your support team, John.
Well, thank you very much, Patricia. Fascinating presentation. I'm sure I speak to many in saying I really learned a lot, and same, of course, with Tagreed's presentation. Fascinating. I'm looking at Q&A. Joshua, I don't see any right now.
Yeah, so if the audience could, if you have any questions, feel free to start submitting them. I'll start with a comment actually from Dui Hua's staff. You know, Patty, this is to you, looking at these photos you submitted of the current juvenile detention center, and Dui Hua staff just remarking, wow, they look like adult facilities, you know, and it doesn't look like that ideal you're striving for in the next phase of a home-like center. We were wondering if this, you know, from your experience working with other colleagues across the country, is this the norm of what juvenile detention facilities are in the United States? Is this a product of a certain time period? Could you maybe just expand a little on these current facilities?
Yes, as you can see, it is a concrete block. It is a concrete bunker. And our juvenile hall actually is a fairly new juvenile hall, so it is shiny, and you do have new cells, but I think anybody that has worked in the system and visited juvenile halls and visited our youth prisons, even though we are only 15 years old, it was based on federal funding that San Francisco received to build a new and bigger and shinier juvenile hall. It is still built like an adult facility. It is similar to our pods for our adults in San Bruno, where we house our adults. They are architects that build the adult prisons as well. So I think that your observations are correct, Josh. There's no difference between an old juvenile hall and a new juvenile hall and an adult facility. It serves the same purpose. The youth are locked in a 10 by 10 cell with a metal toilet next to a concrete slab as their bed. With, as you can see, those are the tiny windows that are actually provide a little bit of sunlight, but you cannot look through the windows.
Okay, actually a follow-up question just while we're on this topic from Richard Ross, the photographer in the audience, asking if Seattle passed a zero population law, where do So that's just for context, if you could speak to that. And he's asking, where would San Francisco kids go if they're committed, or would we be trying to eliminate aspects of commitment and pivot to treatment? And then he's commenting on, you know, Alameda County's huge facility. What do you do in pivoting away from that with the leftover facilities? So to be, you know, talks of turning it into some sort of shelter. How do you remodel concrete and bars? And he says, good talk, Patty.
Okay, that's a compound question, Joshua.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try to address the first one. We are mandated to close and shutter the doors of Juvenile Hall, and you can see the front there on the upper right corner. However, we do have to have this temporary place of detention to house youth until our judges sentence them either to probation at home, to a group home, or to, well, we've just closed, we're closing our youth prison in California. So those youth that would have been sentenced to youth prison will have to have a place of detention that our judges commit those youth to. So in creating our juvenile detention alternatives, we are looking at a secure but very home-like environment. It is not going to look like this juvenile hall that you see. Alameda County is also moving to reduce their population, zero population. So not only are we charged with closing down juvenile hall, the money that is that we are able to secure by the closure of juvenile hall, the $25 million budget, that is going to be reinvested into the community. The charge is to have those youth return to the community under intensive wrap services, to work closely with community-based organizations and agencies, and to work with the families in their community. So it is a true diversion model to the community as an alternative. For those youth that have to be committed now, because we are closing our youth prison on January 1st, 2020, Governor Newsom signed legislation that our youth prison, not our detention hall here, our youth prison in California is actually in Sacramento, and there's a girls' youth prison in Ventura, but there will be no more commitments by our counties, and there's 58 counties here in California, to the Department of Juvenile Justice. That facility is closing down. And so the legislation requires each jurisdiction, and they will receive funding to house those youth who would ordinarily be housed at the youth prison. In San Francisco, we only currently have 4 youth in our youth prison right now. So it's a very small population. So I think that this has created another challenge for our closed juvenile hall, because now we have to look at those 4 youth who might be housed in the youth prison in California.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer, Richard. I hope we addressed your compound question there. This one is for Tagreed. We're just wondering about what types of crimes do you know are girls generally charged with in the Middle East, North Africa region? Do you have an idea of that, or is the data sort of sparse?
Actually, in general, juveniles in MENA region commit minor crimes, you know? And this is the majority of crimes, and this is out of our experience. And I would say that around 86% of crimes committed by juveniles in Jordan are minors ones, like petty crimes. The same applies for girl child. In general, they do commit minor crimes and petty crimes. And in some cases, they are the victims of crimes, but because of the problems that exists within the legislations, they become perpetrators of the crimes, you know? Like, for example, some if a girl go and report a case of violence, rape, or whatever from within the family, and she was forced by, you know, due to the pressure of her family and relatives to change her testimony in front of the court, this girl, her legal status will be changed from a victim to a perpetrator of crime who have provided false information to the court. And for example, this case has happened a lot within the system in many of the different countries. And out of my 20 years experience working in this field, I would say that I only dealt with around maybe 4 little girls who were involved in crimes related to murder in some of the countries. But in general, it's petty crimes.
Yeah, wow. I would encourage the audience to keep submitting questions if you have them. I know we're a little over time, but maybe we could have 5 more minutes at least. One for each of you, if you could briefly talk on this. You know, this is an international symposium, and so there's different domestic political contexts in different countries, but a sort of law and order discourse is kind of in vogue again, it seems. Have you noticed that sort of rhetoric having an impact in the countries in which you're working? So maybe John, if you could speak to China, if there's been sort of tough on crime language turning into policy there, Tagreed about the MENA region, and then Patty about the United States. Sorry, John, you're mute right now. Not sure where John went. Maybe Patty, you can address that first.
Here I am. Am I in now?
There you are.
Okay, thanks. So quickly, what was the question again?
Whether there's a sort of tough on crime rhetoric in China as we have in the American domestic political scene, and whether that turns into, you know, negative policies that affect juveniles in conflict with the law.
I certainly don't want to speak for China. We have seen developments both in China and here, and I suppose elsewhere in the world, where there's still very much, you know, do the crime, do the time, as they say in New York. And as a result of that mentality, you do have movements in many countries to lower the age of criminal responsibility. In China, the age is 14. So, you know, due to a lot of heavy media attention to crimes committed by juveniles, you do see this kind of pressure to treat juveniles even more harshly. And I think Patty, in private conversations, has said, you know, there's a lot of opposition to closing juvenile hall, coming from people who have that mentality. You know, we're too soft on kids, you know, spare the rod, spare the child, that whole mentality. So that still exists out there for sure. But I'll leave others to follow up on that. Patty, maybe you can speak to the opposition.
Yes. Based on our work, as I mentioned earlier, it has been challenging. And one of the challenges that I anticipated was that there would be a lot of pushback from the law enforcement, the folks that are the counselors, and basically they're the guards in juvenile hall, and they're saying, well, we have really dangerous kids, and what about the kids that are released? Do you have data on the kids that are released that committed murders? And so that is a lot of pushback, and we're getting the message from some of the labor unions that they're concerned about public safety. So we have to address all of those issues of public safety. And our message is that we are not closing down a secure facility. We are creating a humane, home-like environment for those very few youth that actually need to be detained. And I will say that locally and throughout California and the nation, even though in the 90s we had the tough on crime, we had this three strikes legislation, which is that if you're on your third felony and when you're 18, you can be, and you commit another violent offense, you could be put away for life. We are moving away from that tough on crime legislation and sentiment that occurred 20 years ago due to the crack epidemic. And because of the changes in our Supreme Court rulings where youth can, that have committed murders in the past, they cannot face a death penalty. California, we just passed legislation to prevent youth from being direct filed into adult court. We have passed legislation in California entitling just recently, effective January 1st, for all youth 17 and younger that are facing a custodial interrogation with the police must have attorney consultation prior to a Miranda waiver. That means that that child is entitled to consult with an attorney before police can question them on any offense. So we are seeing a movement to decarcerate youth, to work with youth in the community. And I think that we are right now on the precipice of creating true reform by closing carceral institutions, our local institution, and reforming the juvenile justice system because it doesn't work. We know that the youth that are incarcerated increases their likelihood of going into the adult criminal system. So we are moving towards diversion. And I know Richard mentioned Seattle, zero population. So we are not the only jurisdiction looking at closing juvenile hall. The other, the most difficult part is looking at the other alternatives besides just having, an alternative to a small facility. But what are we going to do with the entire system? We need to move these youth into educational systems, into the mental health system, into the child welfare system. So I'm feeling very hopeful about it. It's a huge, huge task that we are undertaking. Sometimes I feel like I have to have a bulletproof vest on, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Patty. Tagreed, before we get to your answer on this question, I just want to tell the audience we probably only have room for one question after this. So if you have anything that you're typing out, send it in. Otherwise, after Tagreed gives an answer, we'll be wrapping things up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joshua. Actually, and I do believe that the general global policy of tougher on crime is also affecting juveniles in the MENA region to a large extent. We have been facing serious difficulties in raising the age of minimum criminal responsibilities in many of the countries. And I'll give you an example. In Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Sudan, the minimum age of criminal responsibility is 7 years old. And we have worked for 10 years in Jordan to raise the minimum age of criminal responsibility from 7 to 12. And you cannot imagine the level of challenges that we had to go through to convince the parliament in Jordan to accept that children who are below 12 should not be brought to the criminal justice system and should not be brought in front of prosecutors and the judges. So the overall mentality that we're having from the judiciary also is unfortunately focused more on punitive approach rather than rehabilitative approach, where detention is the first choice, while it's supposed to be the last resort when it comes to juveniles and to children. So even when we have alternatives to imprisonment that are available, you will find that judges will not go to them because they do believe that the proper punishment is imprisonment, unfortunately, and being tough on those children. The other issue that also is very relevant to the MENA region is the whole war on terrorism and radicalization. Due to the fact that many of the children, unfortunately, and I do believe that they are actually victims of radicalization and being joined with many of the radical groups, many of the jurisdictions in MENA countries have dealt with these children as criminals and not as victims of crimes. And this is one of the main issues that PRI is also advocating for, is like children in conflict with the law due to state security crimes, and it's part of the children deprived of their liberty study that Manfred has wrote and PRI contributed to drafting, should be dealt with as victims and not as criminals. And this make us had to face the harsh discussion with the authorities and decision makers about how to deal with these children based on rehabilitation, based on giving them opportunities to reintegrate in society, rather than looking them for life, for example, or for long life sentences in detention facilities.
Well, I'm afraid that we really are coming to the end of this program. Before I turn it back to Joshua, I would just like to remind people that the next webinar, the second of our introduction webinars, will take place on November 10th, San Francisco time, November 11th in Hong Kong. That webinar will feature Anna Wu, who will speak to girls in conflict with the law, the view from Hong Kong. So Joshua, are there some closing points you'd like to make?
Yep, so thank you again, wonderful panelists, for your presentations. I know I certainly learned a lot today. Thank you, audience members, for your questions. As John mentioned, this will be the first of hopefully 12 webinars rolling out over the next few months until March. So keep your eye out for opportunities to register for future events. We do require registration as a security protocol. I know that might have been a hurdle getting you to come here, but we appreciate that, and we'll try to make sure registration and reminders are coming to you smoothly and clearly in the future. There will be a survey that'll be pop up in your browser when this webinar closes. Feel free to give us any feedback, including questions that you might not have had time to submit in the Q&A, or comments if you would like us to send you some version of the slides that our presenters used today. And then you can also, if you're interested in Dui Hua's work, you can go to duihua.org, duihua.org. You can also go to Penal Reform International's website to find out more about what they're doing. And you can also send inquiries to duihua@duihua.org, that email address. It's just Dui Hua 2 times. So thank you all again for joining. And I think with that, we'll conclude the first webinar. Bye, everybody.
Nice work.